Donald Trump unveiled his new economic plan yesterday and includes no income taxes, like he's ever paid them. This is the mop-up for October 11th, 2024. I'm David Feldman. Let's get right to it. I said, let's get right to it.
Hurricane Milton is brought to you by our friends over at ExxonMobil, pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere for more than a century, while keeping you stupid by pumping billions into think tanks and politicians who convince you climate change is a hoax.
At least 12 are dead from Hurricane Milton, which smashed into Florida late Wednesday as a Category 3 storm. President Biden said we know from previous storms the number of casualties will increase. 3 million Floridians are still without power. We are told the storm could have been a lot worse, having failed to strike more densely populated areas. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said the storm was lethal, but not nearly as powerful as he had feared. FEMA provided 80,000 Floridians with shelter after they were ordered to evacuate. 1,000 search and rescue personnel have been dispatched to Florida. 20 million meals and 40 million liters of water have also been delivered. President Biden is asking Congress to come back to Washington to pass an emergency supplemental for FEMA, as well as a supplemental for the Small Business Administration, so new disaster loans could be made to small businesses and homeowners. When asked about the misinformation Donald Trump is spreading about FEMA's response, President Biden said, quote, "Mr. President Trump, former President Trump, get a life, man. Help these people." Rolling Stone magazine reported 2 years ago that Donald Trump, as president, kept asking his national security advisors whether China had a quote-unquote hurricane gun. A hurricane gun. According to Trump White House aides, Trump was convinced the Chinese could control the weather and had a gun that could create hurricanes. Much of this was kept secret, but what did leak before Trump left office was his suggestion that the Pentagon detonate a nuclear bomb inside the eye of a massive hurricane to destroy it, because that wouldn't cause radioactive material to spread up and down the eastern seaboard. The man's a genius. It's a miracle that after COVID struck, he only killed 1 million of us. Well, we have the final inflation report before Election Day. The Bureau of Labor Statistics on Thursday announced consumer price inflation increased at an annual rate of 2.4% in September. That's down from 2.5% in August. It's slightly higher than what the Federal Reserve was hoping for. Unemployment now stands at 4.1%. I've been over this. There's a game that presidents play. They want to hit the sweet spot, and that is what is considered a perfect economy is 2% inflation and 4% unemployment. Inflation right now, 2.5%. Unemployment is 4.1%. For the half of this country for whom this economy works, this could be the best economy ever, which is why Donald Trump has to lie. TD Bank, the 10th largest in this country, became the first bank in America ever to plead guilty to money laundering. Announcing the settlement, Attorney General Merrick Garland said TD Bank created an environment that allowed financial crimes to flourish. He said by making its services convenient for criminals, it became a criminal. TD Bank has agreed to pay $3 billion in penalties. $1.3 billion of that goes to the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and $1.8 billion will go to the Justice Department. At our last watch party, one of my listeners works for the Justice Department, and I asked him, I said, why don't we lock these people up? And he said, because you can pay bills by fining them instead. It's kind of like how the Ferguson, Missouri Police Department paid bills for the city by just arresting black people and fining them into poverty. And he said, this is what our Justice Department does. You get $1.3 billion going into the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network and $1.8 billion to the Justice Department. That's about $3 billion. And, you put them in prison, you don't get $3 billion. At a rally in Pennsylvania on Wednesday, Donald Trump heaped praise on the right-wing Hungarian leader Viktor Orban. On the campaign trail, Trump constantly talks about how this country needs a leader like Orban, whose illiberal attacks on democracy have resulted in crackdowns on freedom of the press, persecution of migrants, the LGBTQ community, and the Arab and Jewish community. Trump said on Wednesday, quote, Viktor Orban, one of the toughest leaders in the world. The press hates him. They say he's a tough leader. Well, sometimes you need a tough leader. And then Trump went on to talk about how much Viktor Orban loves Donald Trump. Well, of course he does. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen slammed Orban on Wednesday to his face at a meeting of the European Parliament. This was incredible. After Orban addressed the European Parliament, she got up and accused Orban of being a Putin apologist. Staring right into Orban's eyes, she said, quote, there are still some who blame this war, the war in Ukraine, not on the invader, but on the invaded. Not on Putin's lust for power, but on Ukraine's thirst for freedom. Moritz Korner represents Germany in the EU Parliament. Here's what he said directly into Orban's face after Orban delivered a speech to the European Parliament on Wednesday. Moritz Korner from Germany said, quote, what a speech, Mr. Orban, what a speech. You say you want democracy and you brag about your majorities in the Hungarian parliament, yet for years you only rule by emergency decree. Are you so afraid of democracy? He goes on to say, you turned Hungary into a banana republic. You robbed your population and enriched your family and friends. Under your rule, Hungary has become one of the poorest and officially the most corrupt country in the EU. What a fraud. What a burden for your people. Mr. Orban, please step down to make Hungary great again. He went on to say, you claim you want to stop migration, yet you let Russian spies into our system, our European system, and call it a national card. That is what you are doing, Mr. Orban. You are not a patriot. You are just a useful idiot of Russia and China. He goes on to say, that's the reality. You say you want to fight for more economic competitiveness, yet you keep introducing new company laws and taxes to drive European competitors out of your country. Tariffs. Like whom? Like whom? Who does Orban remind you of? Donald Trump delivered an economic address on Thursday outlining his vision, his economic vision for the next 4 years. It was an important speech. In the address, he warned that his opponent, Kamala Harris, isn't smart enough and doesn't understand how finance works. He warned if she became president, that could have dire consequences for our nation.
I don't think anything that we're talking about today is high on our list. The whole country is going to be like, you want to know the truth? It'll be like Detroit. Our whole country will end up being like Detroit if she's your president. You're going to have a mess on your hands.
Wow, the country's going to be like Detroit. And where did he deliver this address? At the Detroit Economic Club in Detroit. Speaking to the Detroit Economic Club, trying to win votes in Michigan, he warned that the last thing we want is our country to look like Detroit. Trump is so in on stealing the election. Now he's trying to make sure he has to steal it. He doesn't want to win fair and square. Where's the sport in that? Anybody can win an election. I want to lose and then steal it like I've stolen everything else in my life. Then, because this was a speech on economics, Trump denied He has a problem with female voters.
Somebody said, oh, we love Trump policy, but we don't like Trump. I think they do. They said the women don't like me. I think women love me because they want to be safe. And with me, they're safe. With other people, they're not safe. It's true.
Yeah, women feel so safe around Donald Trump because he's never been found guilty by a civil jury of rape. There aren't at least 30 credible sexual assault allegations against Donald Trump. Then Trump said there can be no successful economy without accountability.
It's amazing that we even exist, but we have 36 trillion in debt. We do have 36 trillion. We can't forget that. So it's not like, oh, gee, that's been, we've been a little bit unlucky or something. No, we've been just for years and years and years, we've been accumulating. We have these deficits that are monstrous.
$8 trillion of that debt come from Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts for the richest 1%. That added $8 trillion to our debt. No president has added as much to the national debt as Donald Trump. When he left office, he was responsible for almost 1/3 of our entire debt. Then the candidate who ordered his goons to attack the Capitol on January 6, Donald Trump, warned democracy is under threat, and he told us who is threatening it.
You see, that's the real threat to democracy, stupid people. That's the threat. Our biggest threat to democracy is stupid people.
That's no way to talk about your voters. And because he is such an intellectual, Donald Trump said it's important to remember and learn from history.
Our greatest wealth probably proportionately was in the 1880s and 90s and the early 1900s, where we had so much cash they would set up committees. They didn't know what to do with their wealth. We had such wealth in this country. They didn't know what to do with their wealth. They had they would set up, we had so much money.
Yeah, there was so much wealth in the late 19th century and early 20th century. So much wealth. All you have to do is read Upton Sinclair's The Jungle to be reminded of how much wealth there was in the early 20th century. There was so much wealth in the early 20th century. That's why there was no union movement, no progressive movement, no movement of socialists or communists here in the country in the early 20th century, because there was so much wealth and it was so evenly distributed. Everyone was wealthy and they shared it all. And where did the wealth come from? Genius. Where did it come from?
All from tariffs. There was no income tax.
All from tariffs. Tariffs. He wants to put 200% tariffs on anything that comes from Mexico. And that way we can get rid of the income tax. You pay everything through tariffs. It was great back then, according to Donald Trump. No income tax. You got to keep every penny for yourself. A 5-year-old kid back then could go off to work at the steel mill, and at the end of the day, he got to keep every penny, all 3 of them. The government wasn't your partner back then. A 5-year-old kid worked an honest 14-hour day, and he got to keep all 3 cents. Didn't have to give anything to the government. It was a golden age of prosperity. No Federal Trade Commission. Not only a golden age for prosperity, but with no Federal Trade Commission, it was the golden age for snake oil salesmen. Donald Trump would have been so much happier living back then. No antitrust laws, no USDA inspecting our Trump steaks, no Food and Drug Administration warning us against ivermectin. It was a great time to be alive. For about, 35 years? That was the average life expectancy back then. But then they brought in the income tax. That was 1913. And the government started growing, as did the average American. 100 years ago, the average man was 5'6". Now he's about 5'9". But who needs an additional 3 inches? Except for maybe Donald Trump, according to Stormy Daniels. But go back to your economic lesson. Tell us how income taxes caused the Great Depression and not tariffs.
And then they went to the income tax stuff, and it was a whole different story. Then you had the Depression. A lot of people said, "Oh, tariffs," maybe because it wasn't. Tariffs came in 1932 after the Depression. They tried putting tariffs on to see if they could save. They said, "We got to save this thing," but it was long gone. It was gone.
Yeah, tariffs, he says, came in 1932 after the Depression. He's so smart because every history book says the Depression lasted until 1939, but Trump just said, and he's smarter than everybody, he says the Depression ended by 1932, and he said tariffs were introduced in 1932, so there's no way tariffs could have caused or exacerbated the Depression, he says. The dumbest human being on the planet. The stock market crashed in 1929. That was when the Depression began. But nobody knew it was going to be the Great Depression. They knew the stock market had crashed and the economy was beginning to tank, but they had no idea it was going to last 10 years. So about 8 months later, after the stock market crashed in 1929, then President Hoover signed into law the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. And he didn't want to. He thought it was a bad idea, but he was pressured by the Republicans to sign it. He wanted to veto it, but he went ahead with it. He signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act in June of 1930, as the Depression was just starting to kick in. Trump said these tariffs were signed in 32 after the Depression. So Hoover signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act in June of 1930. All of Europe begged him not to sign it. They said protectionism will only make it worse. And this is from the New York Times, May of 1930, a month before Hoover reluctantly signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. And you can see 1,028 economists, professors from 179 colleges had urged President Hoover not to sign the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. They warned of reprisals where European countries would add tariffs to American products and the world economy would collapse. Within a year, American exports were down nearly 70%, and our nation's GDP crashed by 26% within 2 years. So there's some revisionism on this. They're saying that the Smoot-Hawley tariffs didn't exacerbate the Great Depression the way we like to believe. Whether or not that's true, everybody agrees that protectionism and these tariffs exacerbated the Great Depression. Trump is an idiot who will say and do anything to justify cutting taxes for the wealthy. We don't need an income tax. We can pay everything through tariffs. Tariffs will pay for everything. And he's got his voters convinced that when you initiate tariffs, China pays the tariffs. So he's saying no income tax, we'll just get by on tariffs, and the Chinese will pay it. One more time, please, Donald Trump.
You see, that's the real threat to democracy. Stupid people, that's the threat. Our biggest threat to democracy is stupid people.
Let me play that again. That's what I see when this homunculus opens his mouth. This is what I see when Donald Trump speaks.
You see, that's the real threat to democracy. Stupid people, that's the threat. Our biggest threat to democracy is stupid people.
I know people hate that, but it's how I cope. That's my coping mechanism. Then Trump explained the stock market. Why is the stock market so high right now, busting new records?
And there are many people saying, in particular, highly respected analysts like Scott Bessent, one of the top analysts on Wall Street, that the only reason that the stock market has gone up is because Donald Trump is doing very well in the polls, and it looks like he's going to win. A lot of people are saying that. Who knows? But a lot of people are saying that.
Who knows? But a lot of people are saying that. Who knows? A lot of people are saying that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein share the same strain of tertiary syphilis. Who knows? That's what people are saying. Who knows? That's what I hear. That's what I hear me saying. Who knows? Is it true Melania wore a gas mask the night you consummated the marriage? Is that true?
Who knows? But a lot of people are saying that.
Yeah. All the great economists love Trump, like Stephen Moore.
Steve Moore was a great guy. Do you know who Steve Moore is? Great economist.
Great.
He wrote a book, The Trump Miracle, and the book is #1 book, just went out.
Yeah, the Trump miracle. Yeah, Stephen Moore, great economist, loves Donald Trump. So great that Donald Trump was about to nominate Stephen Moore to serve as a governor of the Federal Reserve. I think it was 2019 when Trump was president. And what was not to love about Stephen Moore? Moore calls climate change the biggest scam of the last 2 decades. Well, we saw this week that it's a scam, right? During a debate on the minimum wage, Stephen Moore said, quote, "I'm a radical on this. I'd get rid of a lot of these child labor laws. I want people starting to work at 11, at the age of 12, unquote. And you know whose kids probably should start working? Stephen Moore's. In 2012, he was held in contempt of court after he refused to pay his ex-wife $300,000 in child support. This is an economist we must listen to. See, Trump only surrounds himself with advisors who don't make him feel stupid or immoral. That's how you get close to Donald Trump. And then, on his big economic speech, he said, migrants are destroying our economy.
We allowed them to come in and raid and rape our country. That's what they did. Oh, he used the word rape. That's right, I used the word rape. They raped our country.
Ooh, he used the word rape. Yeah. Donald, we're not so concerned about you using the word rape as much as we are you committing it. Donald Trump is furious with 60 Minutes. He was all scheduled to appear last Sunday, but then he was told they would fact check him. And he said, I cannot go on 60 Minutes. This is true. He said, if you're going to fact check me, that's bias. So Kamala Harris went on 60 Minutes, and Donald Trump was humiliated and embarrassed that she went on 60 Minutes and he was too much of a coward. And this is what he's now saying about her appearance on 60 Minutes.
The other big news is the fraud committed by 60 Minutes and CBS, together with the Democrat Party, working together with them, which will go down as the single biggest scandal in broadcast history, I predict. It's a big story. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
Big scandal. Big scandal. They didn't fact check Kamala Harris, all because she doesn't lie. They found no facts to check because she doesn't lie, and that's a scandal. It's so unfair. This is what I see when Donald Trump speaks.
The other big news is the fraud committed by 60 Minutes and CBS, together with the Democrat Party working together with them, which will go down as the single biggest scandal in broadcast history, I predict. It's a big story. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I can spend hours doing that. I know people don't like it, but it's how I cope. Now, Republicans keep talking about the cancel culture and how liberals don't believe in the First Amendment because we don't think people should be allowed to say the N-word or the C-word at work. We don't think so-called news organizations should be allowed to spread misinformation about COVID, climate change, or elections without being subject to an economic boycott. The Republicans call that censorship. Nobody's saying the government should be cracking down on people who are spreading lies on the news about COVID, climate change, or elections. We're just saying that we, as consumers, have a right to boycott these purveyors of disinformation, and corporations have a right to cancel people who spread hateful and harmful lies. That's also freedom of speech. The First Amendment protects citizens from the government censoring speech. And now the chairwoman of the FCC, Jessica Rosenworcel, warned that Trump is now attacking free speech in the true sense of censorship. When a former president who wants to become president again calls for the government to punish news organizations that he doesn't like, that, by its very definition, is a violation of our First Amendment rights. The First Amendment protects us only from the government censoring us, which is why the head of the FCC finds these statements from Donald Trump so dangerous. So Donald Trump is so humiliated that he chickened out and wouldn't go on 60 Minutes because he was told they were going to fact check him. So he's lashing out at 60 Minutes. And he says, with me, 60 Minutes, they take everything I say, realize how totally brilliant it is, and they take it out. So with Kamala, they add. With Trump, they delete. Like the Democratic Party, they are a threat to democracy. But here's where we get into actual Viktor Orban-style censorship. He says CBS should lose its license, and it should be bid out to the highest bidder, as should all other broadcast licenses, because they are just as corrupt as CBS and maybe even worse. So this is censorship. If he finds himself in the Oval Office again, this is by its very definition a violation of the First Amendment. Stephen Chung is Donald Trump's national campaign spokesman. Here's what he had to say about the 60 Minutes controversy. He said 60 Minutes was exposed for misleadingly editing Kamala Harris's answers in a blatant attempt to cover up her nonsensical word salad. Stephen Chung hates word salad and salad in general. Former President Bill Clinton hits the campaign trail this week for Kamala Harris in Georgia. Clinton carried Georgia in 92. He lost it in 96. Clinton is going on a bus tour throughout the state of Georgia and will be speaking to small crowds, no bigger than a few hundred. He's delivering speeches that are called porch rallies, where neighbors gather around to listen, and he gets to do what he does best, retail politics. President Obama got to work in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Thursday night, campaigning for Kamala Harris. In an emotional speech, Obama said Trump violated the trust of the American people by spreading lies about our government's hurricane response. Obama said, quote, if you had a family member who acted like Trump, you might still love them, but you tell them you got a problem and you wouldn't put them in charge of anything. Obama went on to say, and yet, when Donald Trump lies or cheats or shows utter disregard for our Constitution, when he calls POWs losers or fellow citizens vermin, people make excuses for it. It's just mind-boggling. You might remember on our last show, I told you about J.D. Vance's speech in Detroit, where the Detroit News discovered half the people there wearing Auto Workers for Trump shirts weren't auto workers. They were just handed the T-shirts and told to put them on. The Times Tribune is now reporting that when Donald Trump spoke in Pennsylvania on Wednesday, he was greeted by men wearing firefighters' uniforms, holding up signs that read, Scranton Firefighters for Trump. The problem is they weren't Scranton firefighters, and we're not even sure they were actual firefighters. Scranton Firefighters Local 60 issued a statement saying multiple citizens were seen with Scranton Firefighters for Trump signs. At today's rally, no members of Local 60 were carrying those signs. Unbelievable. Well, this is Lee Greenwood, and he loves America, guns, and the Bible. In other words, he's a douchebag. Lee has put out his own version of the Bible, and it includes the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. It's basically a compendium of everything Donald Trump has never read, which is why Donald Trump is now selling this Trump Bible. He's endorsed Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA Bible, and Trump gets a piece of all the sales. It's such a great Bible that Oklahoma State School Superintendent Ryan Walters, who is bringing prayer back into our public schools in Oklahoma, he has now budgeted $3 million for Bibles to be distributed in every public school classroom in Oklahoma. And there's only one Bible, he says, that's suitable for purchase: the Lee Greenwood Donald Trump God Bless the USA Bible. Thanks to Oklahoma State School Superintendent Ryan Walters, every school in Oklahoma has to buy a Bible, and they can only buy the Donald Trump Lee Greenwood God Bless the USA Bible because, Lee Greenwood and Donald Trump, they love Jesus, they love America. This is the Lee Greenwood Donald Trump God Bless the USA Bible. According to the Associated Press, the Bibles are manufactured in Hangzhou, China. God bless the USA. God Bless the USA Bible is manufactured in Hangzhou, China. I don't think too many Christians work in that factory. And it costs $3 each to produce a God Bless the USA Bible. And then it's shipped here to America, and the Bibles retail for $60. $60. But for $1,000, you can get a God Bless the USA Bible autographed by Donald Trump. He is literally autographing Bibles for $1,000 because what would Jesus charge? Right? Jesus would charge $1,000. Don't you have to write a book in order to autograph it? Brett Favre, well, his followers think he wrote the Bible. Brett Favre, the Green Bay Packers Super Bowl champion quarterback, has begun cutting commercials for Donald Trump that are now airing in Pennsylvania, a state that takes football very seriously, and as the New York Times points out, probably hasn't forgotten that Favre and the Green Bay Packers defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Super Bowl. Not sure the people of Pennsylvania like Brett Favre because of that. Favre is all in on Donald Trump. Why not? Favre is accused of stealing millions and millions of dollars earmarked for welfare recipients in Mississippi and using that money to get paid for speeches he never delivered and using that welfare money to build a volleyball arena for his daughter's college volleyball team. This is the mop-up for October 11th. Yes, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. I don't know. I don't know. I'm taking the next couple of days off for Yom Kippur. It's the high holidays. It's the big one. I'm definitely not doing a show tomorrow. And in observance of Yom Kippur. And I have to be honest with you, I need a break from this. I need to purify my body and my soul. This election should not be this close. I'm going to take a few days. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just know that I'm not doing a show tomorrow because it's Yom Kippur and I'll be fasting. 25 days left until November 5th. Please subscribe to this podcast and, of course, share it. I'm definitely not doing a show tomorrow. I want to, but it's bad luck to do a show on Yom Kippur. Maybe the day after, but I doubt it. Or maybe the day after that. I don't know. But I'm definitely not doing one tomorrow. That's Yom Kippur. 25 days left until November 5th. If I'm smart, I will take 1 or 2 days off to get ready for the final push. But I'm just, the Brett Favre, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, Stephen Moore. Why is it this close? It should not be this close. By the way, if you're visiting New York, best time to go to a Chinese restaurant is on Yom Kippur, because my people won't be there. It's the best. Did I say subscribe? Okay, all right. The Supreme Court is back in session, and early this week they heard arguments on whether Joe Biden's executive order banning ghost guns is constitutional. So ghost guns are do-it-yourself homemade kits for hobbyists who don't want to buy a gun from a gun store. They do this through mail order. They get delivered basically 3 parts of a gun come to your home, and you just snap them in place, and now you have a gun. It's called a ghost gun. No background checks. Luckily, on Tuesday, the Supreme Court seemed skeptical that ghost guns were for hobbyists. And the court looks like it's going to uphold Joe Biden's executive order, which, of course, Donald Trump would reverse should he, God forbid, find his way back into the Oval Office.
We will make America wealthy again. We will make America healthy again.
Healthy again? You mean like pass an assault weapons ban, or perhaps give us all Medicare for all? Is that what you're going to do?
You know who's going to do that?
Who's going to do that? You. You're going to, I know you. You're going to pass a farm bill that destroys diabetes, heart disease, and cancer at the source, right? You. Who's going to do it? Who's going to do it?
RFK Jr., he's got some good ideas.
RFK Jr., he's got some good ideas. By the way, Ethel Kennedy, his mother, passed away at 96 from shame. She was a great woman, really was. Really, an amazing woman, quite frankly. There's a great documentary about Ethel Kennedy. I think it was on HBO. It's worth watching. Great woman. She went to visit Cesar Chavez right after her husband was shot. She got spat on. I mean, it was amazing. And she did a good job with Bobby Jr. It was the brain worm and mental illness and trauma untreated. Anyway, please continue about making Americans healthy again, Donald Trump.
How about that one? Your child goes to school and they take your child. It was a he and comes back a she. And they do this.
They're doing this.
They do it.
They're doing it. They're doing it.
And often without parental consent. Can you even believe we're saying this?
Yeah, I can't believe you're saying that. It's amazing that, it's such a big problem, and I can't believe that you have to say this. It's such a big problem that you're losing in the polls and that you have to say this. Yeah, it happens all the time. It's a big problem. Your kid comes home from school. Timmy, there's something different about you. Happens all the time. I can't put my finger on it, Timmy. Is it a new haircut? You seem different. Happens all the time. Well, the latest polling averages now show Kamala Harris continues to lead Donald Trump nationally by 3 percentage points. And she has been leading him by either 3 or 4 percentage points in the national polling averages for 6 weeks. And with that kind of consistency, there's no question she's going to win the popular vote, and that will bleed into the Electoral College. But the blue wall is tightening. I have to be honest with you. The blue wall is tightening. Now, I said these 3 states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, will come down to anywhere between 150,000 to 200,000 votes. That's what happened in 2016, 2020. It's 200,000 voters in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania that will decide this election. And the latest polling averages tell us that Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania show Harris leading in all three states by slightly less than 1 percentage point. These are the averages in each of the blue wall states. And it is the closest it's been in the blue wall in at least 6 weeks. There's no question the race is tightening. And Trump has a slight lead in Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona. If the election were held today based on the polling averages, Kamala Harris would win. But she can't afford to have Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin taken from her. Trump has a slight lead in Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona. Reuters reports this morning that Donald Trump, I was talking to some people today. Stop thinking it's going to get better. It never ends. It didn't end when he lost in 2020. It never ends. This is the way it is forever. And it was like this before Trump even came on the scene. This never ends. You have to fight, 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 because they never stop. It never ends. It's not going to get better on November 6th. She's going to win, and he's going to fight. And then she's going to be inaugurated in January, and the fight continues. And it now looks, unfortunately, as of this morning, that the Democrats are going to lose the Senate. That's the way it looks right now. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. John Tester not doing well in Montana. There's Osborne in Nebraska, the independent. Nothing would please me more to see him beat Deb Fischer. There's some polling showing him leading. Nothing would please me more than his being the senator who puts the Democrats, keeps the Democrats in charge of the Senate. He's an independent. Colin Allred, maybe in Texas, maybe. Powell in Florida, maybe. These are long shots. And Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin, that race is tightening. This should not be happening. The race should not be this tight. And this is why polls are so important, because eventually you have to blame the American people. Eventually, at some point, you have to say, Jesus, who are we? Who are we that it could be this close? Now, I'm expecting a sea change, but I'm not seeing it in the polling. But, Michael Moore is expecting a sea change. But it never gets easy. It never was easy. It's childish to think we're going to elect Kamala or Biden and Obama, then we can go back to our video games. No, it's not. It was never easy. Reuters reports this morning that Donald Trump has succeeded in planting election deniers on key election boards in several swing states. Now, these are not, Reuters says they're not enough election deniers to throw these elections in Donald Trump's favor, but there are enough of them to slow the certification process down. According to Reuters, they have counted 37 pro-Trump election deniers now sitting on election boards in the largest counties for Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Open Secrets reports that the 2024 presidential election will be the most expensive in American history, coming in at $16 billion. Half of that, of course, spent on Donald Trump's legal expenses. Bob Woodward's new book, War, comes out next week, and advanced copies reveal Joe Biden drops the F-bomb. Joe Biden drops the F-bomb so much he'd make Shane McGowan of the Pogues blush. Shane McGowan. Let me give you a gift. I promise you, most of you have already heard this. Go to YouTube, not now, but after the show, and type in Shane McGowan with Sinead O'Connor singing Haunted. Just go, not now, when my show is over. Go to YouTube and type in Shane McGowan with Sinead O'Connor singing Haunted. It may be the best gift I've given you. I defy you to listen to it once. In fact, leave a comment if it doesn't give you the chills, if you don't think it's the most amazing thing you've ever heard. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about that song. It's perfection. It's perfection. Anyway, back to Bob Woodward. How are we doing on time here? Oh, okay. Bob Woodward's book. This is Stephen Chung. Have I talked about Stephen Chung? He would be Trump's campaign communications director. There's Stephen Chung, the face of the Trump campaign. And he calls Bob Woodward's book, and Bob Woodward, a total sleazebag who is slow, lethargic, incompetent, and overall a boring person with no personality. Stephen Chung called Woodward lethargic. Well, compared to Stephen Chung's zip and pep, everyone is lethargic. I mean, nobody can keep up with the whirling dervish that is Stephen Chung. Stephen Chung, seen here running back into Trump Force One to retrieve a half-open bag of lizard hearts he forgot to take with him, called Woodward's book, quote, the work of a truly demented and deranged man who suffers from a debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome. I love this guy. It's everything you need to know. How do you get close to Donald Trump? How do you get close to Donald Trump? This is how you get close to Donald Trump. Stephen Chung. That just says it all. All right. In the Woodward book, he reveals that Trump communicated with Putin after he left the White House. And I think that's sweet. Friendships always begin at the office, but, they last for a lifetime. Woodward writes that Trump and Putin spoke 7 times since Trump left office, as recently as this year. Hi, Vladimir. Who you killing? Can you believe what a bitch Nikki Haley turned out to be? Woodward writes that Trump in 2020 sent Putin a brand new COVID test for his own personal use. Well, that's what friends do for friends who know you stole from the Russian mafia and they want it back. Here's Donald Trump Wednesday night. Blessed is the peacemaker.
And I will end the war with Ukraine while I'm president-elect. And I will end the war with Ukraine while I'm president-elect. I won't even wait to get into office. I'll end it. And I will end the war with...
Yeah. That's in violation of the Logan Act, by the way. President-elects are not permitted to negotiate with world leaders. You got to wait to your president. It's why General Michael Flynn only lasted 2 weeks as Trump's national security advisor, because he was making deals with the Russians before Trump was inaugurated. You can't do that. Other revelations from the book include Trump called Putin a genius right after Russia invaded Ukraine. Trump couldn't bring himself to say during any debates that he hopes Ukraine wins. He opposes American military aid to Zelensky's government. He pressured Congress not to approve this year's supplemental for Ukraine. And he said he would negotiate an end with Putin. before even taking office. So what kind of deal would Trump strike to end the fighting in Ukraine? The New York Times reports that J.D. Vance is on record saying Trump would negotiate a deal where Russia keeps all the land it seized and Ukraine vows not to join NATO. On 60 Minutes, Kamala Harris said Trump's plan to end war in Ukraine is basically surrender. Also, from the new Woodward book, President Biden blamed Putin's invasion of Ukraine on Obama's mishandling of Putin's invasion of Crimea back in 2014. Woodward writes the CIA got it perfectly right that they learned of Putin's plan to invade months in advance. Biden and Putin had a heated phone call weeks before the invasion where Putin warned Biden to stay out of this and then threatened to use nuclear weapons. Woodward writes Ukrainian President Zelensky didn't believe Kamala Harris or Joe Biden when they warned him an invasion was imminent. Woodward writes, weeks before the invasion, Harris warned Zelensky he could get captured and or killed by Vladimir Putin. Biden writes, Biden, at one time, according to Woodward, believed there was a 50% chance Putin would resort to nuclear weapons in Ukraine. In a heated exchange, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin warned Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu in October of 2022, don't do it, when once again Russia threatened to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. That's according to Bob Woodward. After Biden ended America's 20-year war in Afghanistan, George W. Bush called him. Now, you might remember, pulling out of Afghanistan wasn't easy. Bush said to Biden over the phone, quote, oh boy, I can understand what you're going through. I got effed by my intel people too. Yeah, George W. Bush got effed by his intel people. See, he ordered them to make up evidence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and then they forgot to plant fake weapons of mass destruction in Iraq for our military to find. I can't believe my intel forgot to plant the evidence. Woodward reveals that Joe Biden despises Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and has said privately Netanyahu can't be trusted. Woodward writes that since Israel's ground invasion, Biden kept warning Netanyahu, you have no strategy for Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, canceled Wednesday's visit to Washington as Israel's war spreads further north, deep into Lebanon. Lexi Zidon, co-founder of Uncommitted, the pro-Palestinian Democrats of Michigan who refused to vote for Joe Biden in the Democratic primaries, well, she is now urging Michigan Democrats to vote for Kamala Harris. Although she says this is not an official endorsement of Kamala Harris, she says pro-Palestinian voters are basically left with no choice since Donald Trump would be so much worse. For example, David Friedman, Trump's ambassador to Israel, recently called for Israel to annex the West Bank. Friedman was also instrumental in moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which was viewed by Palestinians as a provocation. Jared Kushner, who negotiated the Abraham Accords, recently said Gazans should be relocated to the Negev Desert, which is an arid, unlivable part of Egypt. This is how New York real estate pigs think. Let's just gentrify the Gaza Strip. Earlier in the week, Donald Trump did a radio interview where he lied and said he visited Gaza. He never stepped foot in Gaza. Then he added, it could be Monaco. He believes this. He's so stupid, he hears Gaza Strip and he thinks, oh, like the Las Vegas Strip. We put in some slot machines and strip clubs and everything will be okay. Because we all know how successful Donald Trump has been with his casinos. Donald Trump on October 7th spoke at his Doral Hotel before a Jewish audience, assuring them Israel had no better friend than Donald Trump. He said goodnight and walked off stage. to the Village People's YMCA blasting over the loudspeakers. Nothing says, I get the Jews more than the song YMCA. Woodward writes that Saudi Arabia's leader, Mohammed bin Salman al Saud, told Secretary of State Anthony Blinken he couldn't care less about a Palestinian homeland. The Saudi leader reportedly told Blinken that a Palestinian homeland would help Saudi Arabia politically, but personally he couldn't care less. Here's the latest as we go into year 2 of Israel's war with Hamas. The Lebanese Health Ministry is reporting this morning that 22 people were killed and 117 wounded after Israeli airstrikes hit central Beirut. Benjamin Netanyahu has confirmed last Thursday's killing of Hassan Nasrallah's successor, Hashem Safadin. Hassan Nasrallah was the Secretary General of Hezbollah. Benjamin Netanyahu said they've killed the nephew, and not the nephew, he's the cousin and the successor, although has not been confirmed by Israeli military. Hezbollah fired more than 200 rockets into northern Israel on Thursday. Al Jazeera reports 63 Palestinians were killed Thursday in Israeli airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went on national television to warn Lebanon to throw out Hezbollah or face the same consequences as the people of Gaza. The mayor of Beirut now warns no place is safe. Hezbollah has reportedly signaled that they are ready to negotiate a ceasefire with Israel. An Israeli airstrike in Syria's Damascus reportedly killed 7 Hezbollah commanders. In Gaza, at least 42,065 people have been killed and 97,886 wounded since Israel began its invasion back in October of 2023. Al Jazeera reports in Israel, at least 1,139 people were killed by Hamas on October 7th, and more than 200 people were taken hostage. This is the mop-up for October 11th, 2024. How are we doing on time? I'll keep going. Some more tidbits from the Woodward book. You might remember right after the Trump-Harris debate, Senator Lindsey Graham was in the spin room, and he said Donald Trump lost. You never say Donald Trump lost the debate, because pretty soon you'll start saying Trump lost the election. Laura Loomer, who flew to the debate with Trump, was infuriated by Lindsey Graham's disloyalty, and no doubt on orders from Donald Trump, tweeted the following to punish Lindsey for saying Donald Trump lost the debate. She writes, "It's 2024. There's no reason why Lindsey Graham needs to hide the fact that he's a gay man. Come on, Lindsey. I like men too. No need to hide. I want you to relieve yourself of your toxic closeted anger. It's 2024. Nobody needs to hide that they are gay anymore." That was, no doubt, done on orders by Donald Trump to punish Lindsey Graham for saying Donald Trump lost. Well, Lindsey got the message, and he immediately hopped on a jet and flew to Nebraska and lobbied hard to convince Republican lawmakers to pass a bill changing their state to a winner-take-all in the Electoral College. Nebraska and Maine are the only states that award proportional electors. And as you can see from my worst-case scenario map, here it is. If Kamala Harris wins the blue wall and loses North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, she still gets to 270. You see that? And you see this little blue dot in a sea of red? That's Omaha, Nebraska, and Joe Biden carried that district in 2020. Harris is going to carry it in 2024, and that's one electoral vote. And Lindsey Graham got on a plane after he was humiliated by Laura Loomer and flew to Nebraska trying to convince Republicans to make Nebraska a winner-take-all state. Why? Because look what happens if that one blue dot turns red. Right now, Harris has 270. 270 is all you need. Trump has 268. You flip that one blue dot in Nebraska from blue to red, and what happens? Harris has 269. Trump has 269. It's a tie, right? Trump picks up the extra electoral vote. Harris goes from 270 to 269. Trump goes from 268 to 269. It's a tie. And what happens? Well, the Supreme Court doesn't have to take the case. The Supreme Court doesn't have to throw it into the House of Representatives because by law, when there's a tie, if nobody gets to 270, the election is decided by the House of Representatives. You got to get to 270. Otherwise, the House of Representatives picks the president. Kind of interesting, isn't it? Think about this. This is why we are not allowed to have a viable third party. If you got a third party racking up enough electoral votes that eats into the Electoral College and nobody gets to 270, well, then the House of Representatives starts picking our presidents. It would almost turn us into a parliamentary system where the Speaker of the House is the Prime Minister. Kind of. Think about this. If we had three parties, three viable parties, there would be times when the three parties would be divided so evenly that nobody gets to 270. And that means the House of Representatives picks the president. And you can't have that. It would be bad for us, because you see this map? They'd have to change the laws. Each state gets one vote when the House of Representatives picks a president. Look at the sea of red there. There are more red states than blue states, and I've gone over this, but it's important. California has a congressional delegation of 53. They would go off and vote for president, and they'd come back and say, we have 43 votes for Kamala Harris, 10 votes for Donald Trump. We're awarding the state to Kamala Harris, and she gets one vote. And Wyoming has one member of Congress. I think her name is Harriet Hageman. She beat Liz Cheney. She's going to vote for Donald Trump, and that's one vote for Donald Trump. California and Wyoming, same number of votes. And you see all those red states? That's why Republicans want this to go into the House of Representatives. Anyway, that's why Lindsey Graham was in Nebraska trying to turn it into a winner-take-all. Well, Lindsey is in a lot of trouble again. It turns out Lindsey Graham told Bob Woodward that Biden beat Donald Trump in 2020 fair and square. This is apostasy in Trump world. I mean, it's unbelievable that Lindsey Graham would say that, because Lindsey Graham testified before Jack Smith's grand jury, special counsel Jack Smith's grand jury, in the election interference case about the role he played in trying to get Georgia to overturn the election results in favor of Donald Trump back in 2020. There was talk at one time that Jack Smith was going to indict Lindsey Graham. The grand jury in the Georgia RICO trial voted to indict Lindsey Graham. Let me repeat. The grand jury in Fani Willis's Georgia RICO trial voted to indict Lindsey Graham. But according to a lot of reporting, especially I was reading in The Hill, I looked this up, According to The Hill, prosecutor Fani Willis decided against the grand jury's advice. She decided not to indict Lindsey Graham because of the complexities of indicting a sitting United States senator. But make no mistake, Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, Republican, allegedly testified before Fani Willis's grand jury down in Fulton County that Lindsey Graham called him and asked him, the Secretary of State, to throw out votes legally cast for Joe Biden. Lindsey Graham was all in on the steal right up until they stormed the Capitol on January 6th. He did vote to certify the election for Joe Biden, but weeks later he came to his senses and refused to vote to convict during Donald Trump's impeachment trial. This is a really bad guy. Lindsey Graham is a really bad guy. And now, according to the Woodward book, Lindsey Graham not only said Trump lost in 2020, but he said visiting Trump at Mar-a-Lago was like going to North Korea, where everybody lives in fear of the dear leader. Unlike Lindsey Graham, who doesn't live in fear of the dear leader. When Lindsey has obviously had too much to drink, he's willing to say whatever he really thinks about Donald Trump. And then when Donald threatens to expose the secret that's really not so secret, Lindsey comes crawling back, begging for forgiveness. Donald is busy right now, but Lindsey Graham is going to be punished for this. And deservedly so. Deservedly so. I'm David Feldman reminding you to stay. Somebody is at my door. I have a Ring camera. I'm David Feldman reminding you to stay strong. I have my landlord, Mr. Manicotti, is banging on the door, but I'm not going to answer. That's Mr. Manicotti. And he knows I have a Ring camera, so he's going to start threatening me.
Feldman, I know you're in there, so open up. Open the damn door. I'm your neighbor and your landlord, and I am in distress, so stop doing that inane podcast nobody ever listens to and help a brother out in need. Otherwise, I'm going to increase your rent by 15%. I never gave you permission to do a podcast in this building. I can go to the mayor right now and have them shut you down for violating city code by blurring the line between residential and business space. So, don't mess with me? I can shut off your hot water for a month and you'll have to join the YMCA again for a warm bath, and Lord knows what else you do down there. Now open the damn door. This is your landlord, and I need someone to look at my right toe. It's inflamed and hot, like a spicy Cheeto Ranchero. And I have no idea what's going on down there because I can't find my reading glasses, so I need you to tell me if this is a fungus or just some fuzz from my orthopedic wool socks. If it's fuzz from my orthopedic wool socks, then fine. I'll leave you alone. But if this is what I think it is, the advanced stages of toe fungus, then I'm going to need your help again. So stop blathering on and on about Trump on your stupid podcast and come tell me if this is toe fungus or just fuzz from my orthopedic wool sock. Also, my girlfriend Samantha is coming over in an hour and I need you to give me another mani-pedi. These fingernails and my toenails are yellow, brittle, and slightly discolored. You need to fix that. Otherwise, I'll turn off your toilet and you'll be going in a paper bag for a year. Now open that door.
Okay, I got to wrap it up. This is what I have to live with. Thank you to Bob in the chat room and Mila for keeping the conversation civil. Is he still there? Yeah, he's still there. Please go to shopdavidfeldman.com. Check out my worst case scenario mugs, and Halloween is coming up. You may want to check out the Halloween collection. This is really scary. This is Donald and Melania at the 2029 inaugural ball. That's a pretty scary Halloween gift. You have to... Is he still there? He's still there. Okay. You might want to pick that up for Halloween. And Halloween is coming up, so you got to order now. You got to give it 10 days by U.S. mail. This is a picture of Donald Trump with his fangs asking, "Got blood?" And then it's Donald Trump as Count Trumpula. Yeah, he's still there. I'm being stalked. Count Trumpula, you know the movie Friday the 13th, Part 2? This is January the 6th, Part 2. And this is the Blair Witch Project 2025. And what else? Felony Count Dracula. I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. I gotta hide. This is really creepy. It's my landlord. Please subscribe to my channel and my newsletter. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Please share this. Please share. God, this is so creepy. Please share this episode with your friends. And thank you for listening to all this. I'll see you soon. It is so creepy living this way.